Boom, straight to LinkedIn. Or you can, there's lots of options. QR code, any website, any URL.
Awesome.
Okay. Let's see if I can share my screen here with everyone.
Love it.
All right, cool. Well, it's fun multitasking when you're on Zoom to like do the introductions, check all the waiting people. This is great. So thanks everyone for being here. This is super exciting. This is our first tech stack series with RevGenius. We have three amazing individuals here with us today who will walk you through everything they know about tech stack and answer all of your questions that you have. So as you have questions today, please submit them in the chat. You can submit them to me directly. And I'll make sure to answer or to ask all the questions for our panelists today. Welcome to our first Tech Stack. Super excited that you're here. My name's Galem, and I am a co-founder of RevGenius. We also have Jared Robin here tonight, who is our other co-founder of RevGenius. So I am going to let everyone introduce themselves, and as we go on, I will ask some questions that we have for our panelists, and when you have your own questions, submit them to me and I'll make sure to go ahead and ask them. So Justin, take it away.
Awesome. So coming in live here from south of Santa Barbara, a place called Carpinteria, which is known for Almeric surfboards and the fact that Ashton and Mila live here. So everyone can stop staring at them now. So yeah, I'm a little nervous, which is great because it's like getting on a stage, but I'm just sitting in my backyard. So I'm really excited to have, you know, Morgan and Rosalyn on this call. I really respect their acumen. And I'm just really excited about the growth of the RevGenius community. I've been spending quite a bit of time studying tech stacks and where they can go. Where they currently exist today, sort of the 1.0, and where the 2.0 and 3.0 goes, and you know, beyond sales development, where do we really go with artificial intelligence and automation and, right, a lot of these futuristic ideas toward the singularity, the fusion of human and machine. So we're gonna stick to some of the more practical ones today, less hoverboard and more maybe curly brackets. But if this is our, like, you know, inaugural kickoff, you know, christen the ship. And I'm really just excited to get Q&A and feedback. We wanted to pick some themes. If we go to the next slide, I just wanted to kind of highlight the problem and the opportunity. This comes from Tenbound. And this is the Cambrian explosion of sales tech stacks. Love dinosaurs, went to dinosaur camp. I guess during the Cambrian period, as opposed to the Jurassic or Pleistocene, this is when like all of life sprang up, the flora and fauna. Now, when Manny Medina did the announcement of the $50 million outreach round, I was kind of stunned when he called it a Cambrian explosion of sales tech stacks. So I thought maybe that is art imitating life or life imitating art. You'll see this map even 6 months ago, and it's a fraction of the size. Coming down the left side is the outsourced services. The amount of, you know, fractional marketing operations, fractional RevOps, fractional sales, the amount of sort of everything as a service has exploded. And then across, because this is RevGenius, across all revenue, across marketing, operations, and sales, every aspect, AI for coaching, AI for managers, it's pretty incredible. So to give you some mind-boggling statistics, just to tee up this talk, I think there's about 600,000 XDRs in North America, like an SDR, MDR, BDR, LDR. That's going to go to 2 million in the next few years. And the amount of funding that's going to go into this category is about 5 billion in VC. Because of the crisis, and most of us are field and remote and inside, it creates a lot of problems and opportunities. It creates a space to invest in these tech stacks. For me, the purpose of my work is that we're in the fourth industrial revolution. And if 70% of what a seller can do is automatable, there's a case to be made for automating as much as possible to return the human to innocence, to selling, to marketing, to driving revenue. Because what's better than maybe optimizing all these stacks is you know, working with a team, working with someone like Rosalyn to optimize it all, so then you can communicate like Morgan, or, you know, leveraging H to H themes in doing this, right? So what we get is we get more qualified conversations, more empathy, more human-to-human interaction. That's like the purpose of all of this. So in the 2010s, you had Predictable Revenue, an amazing book. It became the Bible of Silicon Valley scaling, what it's called. It kicked off what I like to term the SDR AE industrial complex. All that means is when you start a startup company today, you read that book and you have SDRs and you have AEs. You have openers and closers, and there's some efficiency to that. Now, there's been a backlash to that of the full cycle sales rep. What I really think is going to happen is more of a Jarvis Iron Man suit, more of an exoskeleton of incredible tech stack blends that enhance what the human is trying to do. For example, on this call, if I had the kit I needed, I wouldn't just be looking at the questions, I'd be getting an overall sentiment analysis of my tech, reading all of your facial expressions and saying, you're bombing. Which brings me to a good Caddyshack reference. I guess when Rodney Dangerfield was first on the set of Caddyshack 2, he did the first take and he sweat profusely and said, I bombed. And he's like, no, you're on a movie set. We can't clap and react. So he actually killed it. And it was some of the best comedic material ever. But wouldn't it be great if during the Zoom call, I could get cued? I could see my notes in HighSpot, in G Suite, in Salesforce, and I could be cued right now on the potential that you're all enjoying this. There's a lot of really futuristic things that we're driving towards that aren't as futuristic as we think. So that's sort of my kickoff. I mean, I want you to all understand, you know, where you can get this map, start to understand these tools. All of us, whether we like it or not, have a tech stack. I've talked to people like, I don't have a tech stack. So, do you use Gmail? Do you have Slack? Do you have Salesforce? Do you have like, you know, and it's sort of like a MacGyver stack, which is taking the stack you inherit and working on it. And then there's, you know, elements of like fully building the, you know, I shouldn't even call it Iron Man. I should call it Iron Person. But building out your Jarvis suit, which is like, well, maybe you are in a situation where you're coming into a company and you can buy tech and you can evaluate tech. The biggest thing I would stress, and where I really want to drill in with Rosalyn as a RevOps leader, is garbage process amplified is just a Jackson Pollock. I mean, there's no reason to take a process that doesn't work and get a bunch of whiz bang tech. And so I'll make my last comment here, we can kick off, is that if Tiger Woods and I go onto the driving range and I have a $2,000 Big Bertha club, I'm going to slice. And if he has a driver from the 70s, he's going to crush me every time. So you still need to sell and market and do operations in a quality way. This stuff is just going to be a multiplier effect, a superhuman ability to scale. So yeah, we're going to do a series of tech stack calls. We really want to hear about your stack, your problems, your challenges, your opportunities. And I have some of the smartest people in the world to do this. Morgan's been super inspirational with some of the ways of using voicemail drops and video and a lot of new media to connect and to predictively connect. Rosalyn has really just showed me marketing operations, sales operations, revenue operations. I follow her feed religiously because, as we were discussing before the call, there's really nowhere to go learn this stuff. By the time my book is out, it'll all be gone. But there's some meta things we can talk about today. There's like frameworks on frameworks that I think will be universal and really help you. Thanks, everyone. I guess we're going to show one slide, but we can go. Yeah, I have made some fun ones. Well, thank you, Galem. I'd love to kick off some questions to the panelists and hear from both Morgan and Rosalyn.
Yeah, Morgan and Rosalyn, do you want to just introduce yourselves and what you do and your expertise and all that good stuff?
Sure. Morgan, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so nothing crazy here. Director of Sales Execution Evolution at JV Sales. What I do is I help sales companies and sales reps break through the noise so they can spark net new conversations to close business.
That's awesome. So I'm Rosalyn Santa Elena. As Justin mentioned, I've been doing RevOps, really leading go-to-market teams for more years than I want to admit, but almost 2 decades actually. So lots of years of go-to-market ops and really just trying to share as much of my experience and learn from others as possible. So I'm currently running RevOps at Clari, but have been at, mid-sized to large public companies and been at, this is actually my 4th SaaS startup. So startup is definitely my space. But really happy to join the team and just kind of share knowledge and try to answer whatever questions we can.
Nice. We do actually have a first question here. So I'm going to go back to you, Justin. The question is, there were 75 outsourced XDR services on the left of the slide that I showed. What companies are using those? Is there a theme or a vertical?
You know, I've been in more companies than years, it is true. This is not actually where I work, but I wear this around town and people go buy the hat from the CEO. It's so funny, they love it. There's actually a guy named Koch that bought this hat off Kachava from Charles Manning. To answer your question directly without the comic relief, it's everyone. I actually was running a team in New York for Swerve and worked with one of these outsourced companies. And then in 2013, I was running a team in a cornfield and I was working with one of these companies. I would ask you the same. I mean, there could be MNDAs in place, but Rosalyn, are you seeing the same? Or Morgan, are you seeing the same? Or have any of the companies you worked in used a third party, you know, SDR as a service or appointment setting?
So I personally haven't experienced that. We've always had an in-house, you know, SDR, ADR, BDR, whatever development you want to call it. But I have been seeing more interest in outsourcing that piece, and Morgan probably will have more expertise in that area.
Yeah, well, if they have an outsourced SDR team, I'm probably not training that team. So I don't see it. But I have seen it in terms of people that I don't train. So I have seen people get outsourced SDR teams, especially now where they may have let go of those SDRs and they just said, okay, I want to go outsource this team instead. So I have started to see it. I don't know about all 75, no idea on that, but again, I have seen it.
That's a corollary I'm just sort of reading too. Morgan, maybe this is a great segue. What was the case you make to in-house that team and to train them internally, you know, because that's kind of the business you're in, but I'm curious if you have an opinion there or what advice you have for people, because some people throw up their hands like, I don't want to, you know, build this SDR team internally because there might be churn, people trying to leave, like as soon as they get good, they're going to become an AE. Just curious your philosophy on that.
My take is that the SDR team is the future leaders and reps of your organization. So if you're worried about churn, then you need to look at your coaching. And you also need to look at also as well, like what are you doing in terms of the marketplace and all those things that are also people are going to pay attention to. When I'm saying, hey, we should have a team in-house, what I'm really trying to do here is control the quality of the conversations. I'm trying to make sure that there's SDR and AE alignment, because if my team is outsourced, right, the SDR AE alignment may be off, right? And they might be getting the leads that they need. But just because you have a lot of appointments doesn't mean anything. You could have 100 terrible appointments. And now people are even more upset because you just wasted my time with 100 meetings that aren't good, right? So, you know, the conversation more is leaning towards, I want to make sure my meetings that I have on my calendar are leading to the revenue that ultimately we want for the organization. And what I'm looking at is if I can coach and train that team to be better at prospecting, and then that leads into them being AEs and leaders, then what you're really doing is saving yourself a lot of time in terms of recruiting and interviews, because you're building these people internally that you can go ahead and promote, and you don't have to scratch your head wondering like, where are we going to get this sales leader from? Where are we going to get this AE from? They're already in there. So that's what I see it.
I know I'm kind of playing moderator here, Galem, but I do host 2 podcasts. So Rosalyn, Scott Haney at Chili Piper came out of the sales org. He just sort of like bootstrapped himself up to fully understanding technical revenue operations. I don't know if you know Scott, but that's a cool path. Like if you're pretty technical as a seller, you can go into this new RevOps thing. Can you talk about kind of how you learned, and for folks on the phone that have interest? I know like Stephen Chase is somebody who loves it.
Yeah, so definitely. I think having kind of that sales background or revenue background is huge to, you know, to kind of jump into operations. I think from my experience, I think operations, there's a lot of, it's sort of a mindset, right? As well as sort of how your brain works. And I don't know if we have a lot of ops people on the call, but you're either an ops person or you're not, right? You're sort of that person that likes to put in process, starts thinking about infrastructure, likes to work with systems, right? When somebody, you know, gives me an idea, I'm immediately like, you know, breaking it down into small digestible pieces, right? I'm starting to think about how do I actually go and execute on this. And so I think that comes with sort of that type of personality and that type of mindset. But having a sales background and moving into an ops role, I think makes complete sense if you're the type of person like me who maybe you don't want to be in the forefront, you know, trying to sell and being that person, but you love the you still love the deal cycle, you still love the business, you want to be part of the go-to-market, but you're also kind of more of the person that can build all the back end.
So Rosalyn, building on top of that, so what do you see as the role that RevOps plays when it comes to the tech stack?
Oh yeah, so I definitely think, you know, RevOps is really, we're responsible for, you know, I always tell people we're responsible for running the revenue engine, right? Everything that sort of happens in the background. So as part of that responsibility, we really manage people, process, technology. So I think naturally the tech stack is a big piece of this overall picture. You know, oftentimes, you know, in an ops role, you're the one responsible for, you know, going out and evaluating the tools, you know, finding the right tool for the appropriate use case, right? We're typically, especially in smaller companies where you don't have a lot of IT or project management support, you're also the one who's working on the implementation, you're doing the rollout, you know, you're doing the training, you're communicating, and you're driving adoption. And, you know, it's Justin pointed out earlier, you're also the one who's building all the process and the policy around the tools and how the team is going to, you know, going to leverage the tools. And again, in some of these smaller companies, you end up being like help desk 101 too, right? There's days when I feel like I just need a little ticket taker and people can pull a ticket, right? Things that aren't working. So, you know, ops absolutely plays a huge role in managing the tech stack, but then at the same time partnering, you know, with your stakeholders, whether that's sales leadership, marketing leadership, you know, your customer success teams, and figuring out what's the need of what are the needs of the business, and then going and figuring out how best to execute on those.
Yeah, and where does the sales enablement fall into the tech stack ownership?
So this is a big debate, I know, for a lot of folks. To me, I always get asked like, well, where should things sit in the organization? You know, should marketing ops roll up to RevOps? Should sales enablement sit in sales ops? And I think, I mean, at the end of the day, my message is always, it's all about alignment, right? It's about everybody, you know, being on the same page, having the same goals, looking at the same data, you know, and we can talk more about that as we get into the tech stack details. But my personal experience has been, if you have a RevOps leader that has enablement experience, like I've had enablement in most of my roles, right? But that doesn't mean that, you know, I don't have an ops person and an enablement person, or oftentimes I'm both of those people, right, in a smaller company. But regardless of where it sits, I think the important takeaway is that they have to be aligned, right? Because ops is building the process and the policy, and enablement is making sure it's getting done, and it's getting done efficiently. And then they have that sort of alignment between the two.
Yeah. Morgan, I have a question for you here. So how do you leverage tech stacks to enhance how you generate business?
So I think for every single person that's in a sales role, it comes down to three things. One is, do you have some type of sales engagement tool? So that would be a Sales Loft, an Outreach, could be HubSpot Sales, whatever. There's Apollo, right? There's a ton out there. Two is, do you have a data source? And normally, if you have the budget for it, I normally recommend people to get two, because leaning on just one data source is normally not going to cut it. Two is normally what I lean on. And like, for example, I use like Lead IQ and Zoom Info, and I use it in a way that is a very seamless flow that allows me to get accurate phone numbers, and also at the same time pulling people right from LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is going to be the most accurate source of data that what you're going to do. So, and then the third piece is a CRM. You know, you got to make sure you have to store all this data that you have, right? And all this information. So that could be Salesforce, again, HubSpot, you know, all Microsoft Dynamics, whatever you have. Again, I know Pipedrive, whatever you have, but those are the three that I'm doing. And that's where people should start. I remember when I started as a manager and we had like 15 tools, and I was like, y'all even know what these tools even do? And everyone was like, no. I was like, all right, so we should probably get rid of it immediately, right? So that's what we did. We pulled it out. And so once you have that base tech, then you can start evolving from there. Because if I tell you, hey, go add video, add crystal nose, you know, add all these different things that I have, you might feel overwhelmed because you got to get those first three down. If you're overwhelmed about those first three, adding more, you're going to feel like, whoa, what in the world is going on? And then someone's question on which pull, the Lead IQ is the one that it does it does pull from LinkedIn directly. You can pull out campaigns and build different persona-based campaigns, and also industries as well from Lead IQ. And that's what I do all day long. So that's where I'd start, but you got to be able to build from there.
Yeah. I have a follow-up to that, but first I want to jump into a question that Jared sent over. So the question is, what's the biggest challenge you find with CRMs, and what's the goal when choosing one in your opinion? And anyone, feel free to jump in and answer this one.
I've always been blessed. I've had Salesforce since day one that I've started. So, I mean, the biggest thing, I think Rosalyn will definitely dive deeper into this, is that the data in there can get dirty. Like pig pen.
Never happens.
like straight just mucky water. You're like, what is going on in here? That is where the CRM can be bad. So it's sometimes not even the CRM itself. It's how people put things in the CRM. And then sometimes it's too late. There's so much bad data, and then there's so much you're trying to rewire, and you're like, yo, what are we doing? So it really comes down to it right in the beginning, making sure your process is tight in how you put in the data, so that you can build from there to pull out the right reports of like, hey, for the past 6 months, we've closed this industry multiple times. We probably should be targeting for the rest of the year. Like, these are little things that every sales rep and sales leader should be doing, is making sure your data is clean, so your process is clean, your prospecting is clean, and your closing is clean. Otherwise, mucky waters. You don't want that. Yeah.
What, Justin, what would you consider base tech? A question here from David Corona.
Base tech, so interesting. So I've gone through the process of writing a book, and I don't recommend it. It's in a traditional way. I like respect Keenan now for self-publishing and selling 40,000, because I've gone through a lot of interesting bureaucracies. Have a great publisher. But basically, I thought about what is a tech stack, and I thought about all the teams that I've managed or led or been a player coach. And it's not a phone, and it's not a pad and a Gmail. I went through it. It's like you're sitting in Sales Navigator, and then LinkedIn says, you can't have the email, and you can't have the phone number. Don't. Hey, boss. Okay, we're going to get Zoom info or Lead IQ, right? So you got to get your data, IPO, which is awesome. And then you're kind of like, okay, I've done 20 or 30 personalized emails, or, video drops, Morgan J. Ingram method, or Josh Braun or Beck Holland, right? So I've done this every day, and now I got to scale it. Okay, now I need a sales engagement platform or sequencer, right? And then, oh, we're remote. My manager has to listen to me. So we need Gong, or we need Chorus. And so, yeah, I mean, that is like what selling is now. And I was trying to find an experience in tech where I have been, where that's not it, and I can't. And that's sort of kind of where TQ came, because the minute, it's just like a math problem. It seems really simple, just like what Morgan said. The minute you add 4 different layers, that's where RevOps has to come in, because even running outreach and sales off together, or Salesforce, it's like, how do you get the governance and not have shadow CRM? So another thing I would say, just the last question, is I wouldn't rotely just buy one tool just because it's already there. Evaluate all in category. So yes, Salesforce has been awesome. I work there, full disclosure. It's a great tool. But if you have the latitude, evaluate 5 CRMs and see what's bespoke for you, or even no CRM.
Yeah. So Ryan, I have unmuted you to go ahead and ask your question, give some more context to your question that you posed.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thanks, Galem. Hey, everyone. So we have we're Series A, and industrial, longer sales cycles, 6 to 18 months. Deal sizes, phase 1 starts at 100,000 and, quickly gets over 1 million. So a smaller team, 20 people in the company. And so I was the first sales hire, came in, installed the, base stack, as somebody just asked a few minutes ago. So that included Salesforce. And so my question to each person in the group is, now that I've made the case to hire a VP of marketing, she wants to install HubSpot, and I'm seeing that it's not as compatible with Salesforce. So I'm interested in learning what the debate is between Pardot, HubSpot, and Marketo, and both thinking short term for a Series A, but also longer term as we build out. And I guess I'll mention, so we have 7,000 contacts, and you sort of pay per contact at our size. So yeah, I'm curious about the pros and the cons and how you go about making that decision, and what the key points are. Like, maybe each of you has a top 3 or a top 5, in your considerations. Is that all the context you needed?
Yeah.
I mean,
So
I'm not the one answering the question, so I hope there is.
yeah.
We
So
don't know live the market right now.
yeah. So let me just I'm gonna just a comment, I guess, Ryan, you know, I get asked that a lot, and I'm sure Justin Morgan do too, as well as most people on the phone. It's like, what's the ideal tech stack? You know, and people just want you to kind of package something and give it to them. But it really depends on, there's so many things that it depends on, right? It really depends on your business, your size of your company, your selling motion, right? Who do you sell to? I mean, there's just so many different factors involved. And sort of as Justin mentioned, I mean, I would definitely recommend obviously evaluating, because there are a lot of great tools, right? We talked about Sales Loft and Outreach just as a comparison. They're both phenomenal tools. They do what they do, and they do it well, especially if you implement them properly. I've been a customer of both. I've implemented both at 2 different companies, and based upon just what I needed for the team at that point in time for that business, I chose one over the other. So it really depends. And I think from a marketing automation perspective, I mean, with obviously Pardot is native Salesforce, right? So you have that benefit. But Marketo is really, I mean, I love Marketo. I probably shouldn't sponsor any, I'm not necessarily sponsoring any particular tool, but they all work as well as, you know, I guess as well as you need them for your use cases. So kind of that's my general advice, is just identify your use cases, make sure you understand your business requirements, and like anything else, evaluate the tools and make sure that they check all your boxes as well as your budget, because that's obviously another big concern. And then you need to look at your talent pool on your ops team too, and internally, and who's going to manage the tool, right? Do you have the expertise in those tools? So I don't know if Justin or Morgan, if you guys have other thoughts on that.
I have nothing to add to that.
That was a great one. Mic drop.
Mic dropped.
Okay.
Nothing to add.
Thank you, Rosalyn.
Did that answer your question? If not, I mean, we can obviously dive a little bit deeper.
Well,
Or you want us to just say, pick that?
no, I was
You want us to
hoping
get a dartboard and just throw it at one while we're here? You know, that's the one you go with.
Yeah. And they say, Rosalyn told me to buy that one. And I'm going to be like, you know.
I was really hoping you'd either have maybe some stories of when you installed all 3 and you could kind of compare.
Oh yeah, definitely don't do all 3, one or the other. Yeah, definitely no, you know, don't have more systems than you need.
For sure.
Definitely not.
So Rosalyn, you alluded to budget, didn't really get into it much there, but I do have a question for Justin here. What's the most effective way to optimize a tech stack at various levels of sophistication and budget?
You take a time machine to 2049 and then build it in reverse. I'm trying to think. So for me, it's like a lot of metaphors, and I would really love to hear from Morgan and Rosalyn on this one too. But the beauty is you have a tech stack even now. And even if it's a Frankenstack, which is a word I learned from Alan Trefler, who's a chess master and one of the brothers that made Pegasystems, and they do RPA. They do this awesome automation, like they build big systems for Verizon, a very small amount of clients, and really sophisticated marketing automation. So we usually have a Frankenstack. So just like Ryan highlighted, we have like, oh, we inherited this. Like you come in and do RevOps and you've got SaaS contracts that are multi-year and you can't really rip it out. So you have to, I see Rosalyn nodding her head. You have to be MacGyver or insert superhero who's going to, you know, save the world with a toothpick and an umbrella. So if your tech stack is easy as like, you know, I've had experiences where deliverability was so bad out of certain systems that reps are like side loading a Gmail and a Cirrus Insight account to pixel track. So there's always a solution, even if you have no budget, to just leverage what you have a little bit more. And then there's sort of the bridging solution where you add some glue to it, like a Zapier, Workato, or Tray, or some piece of API, if this then that, some way of integrations or connections. You can even dev toward it. You might even get some dev. This will probably never happen. I want to ask Rosalyn, can you ever get resources for devs to write to your RevOps needs? Okay.
Not in a small company.
That was
not in a small company. I think in a larger public company where we have a full-blown, you know, IT team, yes. Yeah. But in a smaller company, it's really difficult to even get a Salesforce admin, right? To get a CRM admin, much less, development.
Yeah, so the one thing I wanted to stress is that tech stacks can be hacked in the sense of growth hacking and optimizing, even if they don't talk very well, and even if there's manual process in between, but you want to try to use them to get your automation as clean as you can. It goes back to Morgan's point on data being clean. So if you do have budget, what's happening now is there's a movement toward converged solutions. So if you are coming up for renewal on a certain piece of your stack, go look for stacks that have, maybe like sequencing and data and call analytics or conversational intelligence, right? Maybe you're evaluating outreach and gong, and that's the best to go best of breed, but maybe there's a solution that actually bridges it. There's 75 in category on most of these. Go to G2 Crowd, go to Capterra, keep an open mind. And there are ways actually to probably reduce your budget and get more value pound per pound out of some new tech stacks. There's some like Ample Market's really interesting. I'm always trying a ton of stuff. Like I'm running with every stack I possibly can. That doesn't mean I have all the budget for that. A lot of these folks are disruptive. They're trying to like give trials away and let you try it out and convince you the ROI. So I opened up a can of worms there, Pandora's box. Did I even answer the question? I'm not sure. Is everyone entertained? That's what I'm going for.
So
We are.
There's actually a couple questions in here that I want to drill into, because I think it goes back into the budget, right? So I think when you're thinking about like budget for your tech stack, it's looking at how much budget do you have? And also it's when I'm getting this tool, what's the outcome I'm looking to get it for, right? And don't just be like, oh, I should get this just because someone told me to. Like really look at it. And I think someone said it there earlier, like reverse engineer. That's the easiest way to figure out what you need to go get. Like you may not need certain things at the end of the day. Most organizations have a ton of tools. And like I told you all, you could go through all their tools and they don't even know when they even got them, who even sold it to them. They thought it looked cool for like a month and they don't use it. So really just figure out how can I be lean in that. And I saw someone ask this question around data. How do you get people to put in the data? Well, I remember when I was a manager, we put required fields in Salesforce. Like you have to fill out these fields to move forward. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to create this opportunity. So we had required fields that people had to put in when they created a new account or put in a new contact, because then it forced them, right? Everything at the end of the day, it has to have some type of required field for them to do it, because if it's optional, then it will be optional and it will be done whenever, right? So that's why we always tell people to put required fields around the things that we were doing so that we were able to implement and put in the right data across the board. And I know Aaron asked this question around like, how do you get people to do these things? Well, what we found at the end of the day is if a manager or a leader tells someone, hey, go do this, they see that like as a mom and dad. Like your mom and dad told you to do something, you're kind of like, all right, whatever. But then your uncle or aunt comes in, you're like, yo, that was fire. And then you do it. And then the managers are like, what the heck? So this is what we did in our team to make sure people implemented new tools and updates, is that people in the organization, there's always a power user on every team. There's someone who knows all the tech stack. They have all the new tools. So what we did is we would have them be the trainer for the team. Because if the rep sees another rep doing it, they're more likely to go do it, especially if it's one of the people that's a top performer in your organization. So that's what I'd recommend people to do at the end of the day. Yeah, you could come in and tell people what to do as a manager, sure, but the rep telling them, hey, look, this is how I'm doing it. I'm getting results here. This is how I set it up. There's more buy-in there. So those are two questions I saw there that to drill into, because those are definitely important to have that adoption across the team.
Yeah, and I just want to comment, I 100% agree with you, Morgan. I don't see if you can see me nodding my head like frantically, but definitely, the required fields for sure, but then you get a lot of those where people just type in like 11111, right? So that's where ops comes in and challenges that. But then the other piece around highlighting use cases where there was success is huge, right? I think that's a big one, whether you have the rep train or not, or you're just highlighting, on your enablement calls around, hey, here's a deal that worked really well. Here's the deal cycle. Here's what the individual did in terms of leveraging the tools and the process, and highlighting that as sort of your blueprint for winning. I think that's a great example.
Yeah. I just want to quickly go back to you, Morgan, with a question about, tech. So what piece of tech is most hyped and which piece of tech is most unsung?
Most hyped? Probably a lot.
Yeah, most hyped.
There's probably a lot.
Bring it on.
The most hyped, huh? Man, that's a great question. I'm trying to think of, I have like 15 Google Chrome add-ons right now. So I'm looking at what on here is the most hyped. It's a great question. I think I'm going to go the most unused first before I think of the most hyped, because I could think of a ton of them. But
Yeah.
I think the one that's not used a lot that most people don't know about is Crystal Knows. How many, put a 1 if you have heard of Crystal Knows, and put a 2 if you're like, Morgan, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. All right, so yeah, some people are like, what the heck? So it's not like a drug site. Like, I'm not trying to get y'all to start swindling stuff. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. It's called Crystal Knows. I'll put it in here real quick. But this is, people know about it. Some people know about it, but they don't use it, and people have never heard of it before. This is the most powerful thing of all time. I put it in there. Like, what it does is it can view someone's profile and tells you what their disc profile is, and then how to, yes, I'm saying of all time, because most people just don't use it. You literally can go to someone's profile and it tells you how to prospect them, how to sell to them, what to say to them, what they like. It's a no-brainer. On all decision calls that I go on, I always look at it to be like, okay, what's this person about? Do I need to be direct? Do I need to come with facts? Do I need to be more of a storyteller? Do I need to spark more emotion? It allows you to be a chameleon to that buyer. So,
But Morgan, is that like, for what industry is that for, is it just a US thing? Is it
it's anybody. No, it's
okay.
People. There are people in each country. So yeah, it's for anybody. It reads your disc profile. It doesn't matter where you're living at. And what it does, it reads all the different things that you like, how you comment, how you engage on people, and all the things of that nature based on what you post, based on a lot of stuff. So you can go look it up in there, but hey, look, it's straight fire. So if you're not using it, that's the most under leveraged tech out there that most people, they're like, oh, I know about it, but never use it. And I'm like, okay. So Peter, it's extremely accurate. It's actually scary. That's why I don't like looking at it for me. Cause I'm like, yeah, this is pretty spot on. So actually I could probably pull it up right now and like, you guys can see it. But the thing is that like, this is insanely accurate, I think, at the end of the day. So yeah, that's the most under-leveraged one by far.
Which one's most hyped?
So the most hyped, I think, at the end of the day, and hear me out on this one. Some of you guys can be like, oh, I don't believe that. I don't know what you're talking about, Morgan. Like this is the one I feel like is most hyped, is the use of automating your messages through your sales engagement tool and not using it as a context tool. So let me explain that. So what that means is what most people are looking for. They're like, hey, Morgan, what's the magic template? What's the
formula?
What's the magic formula I can send? I get 100% response rate. Y'all, there is no magic template. There is no silver bullet. And if you think that's the case, then hey, sales might not be for you. So at the end of the day, what the sales engagement tool ends up getting overhyped because you're just like, oh yeah, I could just put 1,000 people in here and I'm gonna get a ton of meetings. Well, that's just not gonna happen. I think what we have to think about a sales engagement tool as a context provider. Like, yes, have different formulas of how you write your emails, but provide personalization, relevance, certain links in there that directly talk to that person to, again, provide that context. And I think a lot of people use a sales engagement tool as a content batch and blast and hope for the best, and they don't get anything back. So that's my most overhyped, and then that's my under leveraged at the end of the day.
Cool. Thank you. We have a question here from Anna Paula. I have unmuted you if you just want to go ahead and ask your question if you're still here.
I'm still here. Hey guys.
Hi.
So Justin, you and I obviously have been going backwards and forth on LinkedIn. But one of the questions I have, so I work for a startup, predominantly have worked for startups. Obviously with a startup, you don't have buckets and buckets of money to spend on lots and lots and lots of tech, right? So I've got like a CRM Salesforce, which is pretty standard today, Gmail, the rest of it, and then obviously bootstringing LinkedIn, right? That's basically what we're doing. What is a good all-rounder? So like I've looked at a lot of things now, and everything seems to do everything a little bit differently. I invited my sales guys, like the top sales guys, I invited them to a couple to get their feedback on what was going to be useful for them, because there's no use just solving my problems. I need to solve their problems and make their lives easier. So what would you find is a good all-rounder? What I need to be able to do is enable my guys to be doing less Salesforce administration, more time talking to people, more time getting good information into the system. And then also I spend a lot of time coaching, because I believe you've got to coach, right? If you want anybody to do anything and improve and just better themselves, coaching is really, really important. So I need to be able to find something that incorporates everything, but at a cost-effective dollar value without having to go and buy 10 different tech stacks.
Yeah, that's such a great question, Anna Paula, and a huge part of what I've been working on. One of the hidden subtexts is that the vendors will bake off against themselves. It's a bit of a knife fight. I mean, if you get 2 or 3 that are converged, so you want, Swiss Army knife ones. You want to find ones that have multiple point solutions converged, in my opinion. I really want to hear what Rosalyn and Morgan say here too, but I would test. I think part of not having the budget is testing for the ROI and testing some different vendors and even baking off against each other, because I think then you'll yield the bespoke solution to you, the purpose built for you. I think a year from now, when we're talking, there'll be so many mergers and acquisitions that we're going to see a lot more convergence, where, let's take a scenario, Salesforce buys Outreach and Gong and Bambora and ZoomInfo. Then you have the Salesforce Sales Cloud, which exists right now. It's called High Velocity Sales, and it's deep. And then they go down market and offer that with some kind of abridged set of features for the mid-market and SMB. This is a very similar route that marketing technology went. HubSpot's done this. All the major marketing clouds have done this. So you're actually asking for something that may be future state. For now, you might need to cobble together some less expensive solutions or use some converged solutions. So rather than like name a vendor, and I have suggested some privately, but I want to kind of be neutral. Yeah, that's how I would go about it, because someone can promise you the moon and the stars, and you put it in, it's like hard to use the UI, and it didn't actually sync with your CRM, and maybe they're not willing to give you a full test, but some kind of pilot period in testing them. What are your thoughts, Rosalyn and Morgan? That's a hard one. Great question.
Yeah, so I mean, I think what Anna Paula was saying around just sort of her use cases, to me, I was just kind of thinking sales engagement right away, the platform that will, provide, remove the need to duplicate efforts in terms of inputting into your CRM, right? You're going to input it into your sales engagement tool. You're going to get the coaching aspect of it. You're going to get the content piece of it, all in sort of one platform, because it sounded more like where she's focused is really kind of the front end around the engagement. But, if I only had to pick one tool, I'd probably go back to Morgan and be like, I want data, right? I want clean data, right? I want a CRM and clean data. If everything else you guys could do on a spreadsheet, I want data, right?
Give me all the data. I'll buy 5 data tools before anything else. I just want all the data in the world.
All the clean data.
Someone tweet that, please. If anyone just got that, I feel like Ryan Chisholm may also have an artificial intelligence clone. He is so encyclopedic. Everyone get to know him. But if anyone caught that quote from Rosalyn and Morgan, please tweet it, because it's great. It's an interesting angle. If you don't have the clean data and clean CRM, then you're just really building on it's not a solid foundation.
Well, you're writing emails or sending videos, and you're doing calls to no one. And then that's even more frustrating. Like you're just getting call. Yeah, you're getting bounce backs when you spend like an hour to do a personalized email, right? I think the best thing to think about and to answer this question is think about it as a buffet in the beginning, right? So like Denny's, Golden Corral, y'all, I don't know if y'all been there before, but they got a lot of food, all right? So you can go in there and get as much as you want, right? So to really like to do this in the best way is that figure out like, what are the tools that could get me a lot more than just this one thing, right? So if I get this one tool that just does this one thing, then I got to go find other tools that can do that. I need to go find a tool that can do like 7 things in the beginning, and they all might not be great, but I got to go buffet style until I can start upgrading to get, you know, the 5-star restaurants that I eventually want to go to of tools. So I think about it as a buffet in the beginning. I check out, I mean, there's so many tools out there, but there's a lot of tools out there that will give you, just like Justin said, trials that are newer tools that do a lot of these different things. They just haven't really exploded in the market yet, but they're out there. Like Interstellar's one, right? They do a lot of different stuff in terms of sales engagement, and you can do a lot of different components within it. And they're great for startups and SMB companies. So there's a lot of tools out there that are just designed for people that don't have the budget yet, and they just do a lot of different things, and that's their market. And then once you grow, you can then find the tools that you really want. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I want to jump in here real quick. So we've talked a lot about the different tools and suggestions and all that good stuff. Rosalyn, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. What's the best way to effectively, you know, measure the outcome of all that and the success of using all these different, you know, tools and things that we talked about today?
Yep, great question. So, you know, as part of sort of the ops world, we're constantly measuring, measuring everything. So around the systems, I mean, I definitely think, you know, how do you measure effectiveness is really around, you know, obviously adoption, speed, you know, is it driving efficiency? Is it making things effective? Because I think at the end of the day, the main question to answer, I think, is, are we closing more deals faster? Are we closing bigger deals, I guess, faster? So depending on the tool, there'll be different metrics to measure. You know, if it's a lead routing tool, you know, are we routing leads faster? Are we qualifying leads faster? You know, are we getting more leads, right? You know, if you're using like a sales engagement tool, it's, you know, are we booking more meetings? Is the content resonating? Are we getting more responses? You know, so there's different, I think different metrics to measure for each tool, but at the end of the day, it's all about driving business, you know, shortening the sales cycle and driving more business, you know, whether it's acquiring new customers, it's upselling into your accounts, it's, you know, making sure that we're reducing churn, sort of those high level metrics that are important to go to market. I think those tools are going to need to measure it, because at the end of the day, I always say, hey, our job is just to drive more revenue faster.
Yeah.
And
we are
adding,
oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to add context to that as well, is the tools are there for you to have more active selling time.
That's right.
That's why the tools are there. So if you have too many tools and you feel overwhelmed and you're not doing active selling time, you probably need to take a look at yourself in the mirror and be like,
That's
I got
right.
too many tools. I didn't get rid of this. So I think it's less than 35% of reps time is like spent on selling or something like that. It's like 35% is like active selling, right? And so you want to use the tools to increase that, to work faster and be way more efficient, to Rosalyn's point, so I can get into these bigger deals across the board. So that's also an additional take as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's a really good
great point. Yeah, and definitely, because you're trying to reduce the administration time, right? So you're not keying in data into each of these systems. Everything, you're just doing your normal job, like making a phone call or sending an email, and everything in the back end is being automated and tracked.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we're coming up to an end here. I just wanted to let everyone know, I'm going to send out, for those who are not RevGenius members yet, there is a form here if you want to become a member that I'm going to share with everyone right now. So there's the form. I wanted to wrap up. So if you have more questions, please do bring them on. But before we get to all of your questions, I have one for you, Justin, because we've been debating now for a couple of weeks whether you're human or not. It's really hard to determine because you're awake like almost 24/7. So we're not sure. The community is asking. But do you think, on a serious note though, do you think that the tech will get good enough to actually replace humans? And do you think AI will take our jobs?
I'll answer that quickly. I think as soon as the tech is good enough to do that, it'll be regulated. So I was talking to the CEO of Science, without an S, John Gerard, very smart leader. as soon as you can send an email, like if I can deep fake, like if I can just be Robert De Niro right now, which we have the tech right now, then the government say, you got to tell someone like, that's my AI being Robert De Niro. I'm not actually, right? If I could just deep fake into Chewbacca right now, we have the tech right now. They won't let us do it. Or if you send an email that passes the Turing test, then the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, would say, this is brought to you by, Justin Michael's AI. But it's more about applications of AI and ML to other things. Like I think what Morgan hit on is the whole thrust of my work, which is freeing up selling time. So I think AI will take away some of the categories of manual labor, similar to first industrial revolution, that none of us want to do. But because there's so much funding going into that tech stack map, there's going to be 2 million SDR jobs because software is eating all the vertical industries, construction SaaS and trucking SaaS. And what do you do when you raise $100 million? You got to get teams of people on the phones and into these tech stacks. So I guess it's a brave new world, and it's going to be AI enhancements. It's going to be the Jarvis Iron Man suit versus Skynet. And I won't answer the question about my origins. The future is bright.
He's got to keep it a mystery.
Hashtag
Well,
the future is bright.
I want to add to that because this is what everyone should walk away and understand is there's two things that are going to happen. It's either the robots are going to be telling you what to do, or you're going to be telling the robots what to do. So you got to take a step back and be like, all right, which side do you want to be on? Because as long as you have the skills and you're continuously growing and you're learning, you're on stuff like this, you're on other webinars, like you're paying attention to things that are on LinkedIn, at the end of the day, you're going to be taking this technology to only make yourself better, right? But if you're just going through the motions, then yeah, you possibly could be replaced. And that's a real situation that everyone needs to keep in mind as we move forward here.
Yep. Rosalyn, anything you want to add?
Nope, I think that's good. I actually get the same question as Justin all the time is, do I ever sleep? And I know, and it's funny, I'm smiling because Justin and I are always chatting like really late at night. At least I found out he's on the West Coast too. Otherwise I'd be like in shock. But yeah, that's the only place you can really save time. Too.
Because he would be up before I'm up, and I'm like 8 hours ahead of him. I'm like, how are you still awake?
He hasn't gone to sleep yet. That's my answer. Yeah.
So wild. All right. So we don't have any other questions unless someone wants to like jump in right now. But is there something, I have a question now, because I wonder if you can go back, let's say 5 years, 10 years, or however long you've been, but let's go back to day one. What do you know today that would be helpful for anyone else out there? If you can start over, and if you know what you know today, if you can go back, what would you do differently?
In terms of my first sales role?
Yeah.
And then also in regards to tech stack, or just in general?
In regards to tech stack, since that's today's topic.
Okay.
But if you have anything else, Morgan, that's like key, if you have more formulas for me, I will take it.
I did have one. I just want to make sure I'm answering the right question. Okay.
I have something to share, or you go ahead, Morgan. I don't want to steal your thunder.
I mean, all I was going to say is that when it comes to the tech stack is making sure that, I talked about it and we didn't do this. That's why I'm very adamant about it, is from the beginning, before you even put in any type of information in the CRM, understanding what do you want it to look like at the end of the day and making sure that it's clean. That's one thing I want to press on again, because all the tech stack that we're talking about, like using sales engagement tools and stuff like that, or whatever you're doing, it's all going to put back in the CRM. So like one thing I wish we would have done a better job of is making sure, like, what do we want this to look like? Do we have it by industry? Do we know which roles that we close at what time? What do we do? So that we could always look at these reports and be better at prospecting in our SDR role and build more pipeline. So like, that's one thing I wish we would have done a better job at. And I would have, if I could have go back, I would have spent all my time trying to figure out how to build these reports and making sure that in the CRM we're tight.
Nice. Justin?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say some portion of my work I'm not generating. I have deployed some AIs. I shared a couple of them in the chat. There's some tech that I got through a team doing some things for Gary Vee. That's really compelling. It's more of a parser. So it digests my video and writings and then atomizes and parses. So it's all me, but it's being built and deployed by AI. And that's the only hint I'll give you. Nobody wants to see the mirrors. They just want David Copperfield. Closing thoughts, Rosalyn or Jared. He's, you know, I'd love to hear from both of you. We're right at the hour.
Yeah, we're at the top of the hour. Jared, did you want to share anything? Being our inaugural RevGenius Tech
Thanks for the opportunity. Love this group. You're on mute.
Now.
Oh,
I'm unmuted. So thank all the hosts for coming. You know, it's funny because I empathize with the CRM being the most important thing. Yet when you start something fresh, it's always the first thing to go by the wayside, right? And this is important because you have 50 million things to do. So you're like, okay, I gotta pick what part's the most important in my CRM? Well, pipeline management and knowing when my next meetings are. But Google Calendar could handle that, right? So it's interesting to hear Morgan at least talking about going backwards and doing that. And you know, I empathize completely as I see 3 of each record in our HubSpot right now. You know, it's so true and so critical. And you know, the big takeaway is, you know, whether robots do human jobs in the future or humans guide robots, you know, you need to be a human. And you need to not just rely on your stack to get in the door, get in, get the business, etc. At the end of the day, it's human to human interaction, right? It's understanding who you're selling to, the challenges they have in their vertical, in their, you know, business size range, etc. And giving the good data, so to speak, or you know, the good inputs into the automation to have the best results, and also jumping in yourself, hopping on a phone, and yes, you could have a gong, record your voice calls and have managers tell you and help you. But at the end of the day, and these guys will probably agree, at least Morgan will for sure. It's you, and it's what you say, it's how you say it, it's how you empathize, and it's what you know about who you're saying to. And yes, there's a lot of tools that could help with that, and use them all. They're great. They could help you, but like making sure that you're not leaning on them to hit your quota, to crush all that, and using that as like dynamite on top will get you everywhere. We'll get you further.
All right, we are at the top of the hour. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. It's been amazing. Thank you, Morgan, Justin, Rosalyn, for being here and answering all of the amazing questions that we got today. Really appreciate your time and can't wait for the next time we have something fun going on at RevGenius. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Awesome.
everyone.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
guys
Appreciate
so
it.
much. This
Thank
is
you all.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
Ciao.